Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Reviewing Recruit Information for Division III Schools webinar today. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedules or joining us. My name is Daniel Scotto, and I am the Coordinator of Communications here at the NCAA Eligibility Center. Joining me today will be Erica Clagas, who is our Assistant Director of Amateurism Review at the Eligibility Center. Just a couple of housekeeping items before we get started today. Your cameras are off and your mics are off, but we do want to hear from you. So please use the question answer function at the top of your screen today. Please also leave your email with those questions just in case we can't get to all your questions today. We will have our customer service team reach out to you with the questions we do not get to. So for today's agenda, I'll just be going over a couple of points here as we have a jam-packed agenda. So first off, we will be talking about who needs a Division III amateurism certification and looking at that. We'll also be looking at the PSA steps to certification and their enrollment dates. And at the end, we'll take some questions that we have, and then we'll wrap up with some resources. Just as a reminder that this is being recorded, and if you're registered, you will be getting a recording of the presentation today, as well as the clickable links throughout today's presentation. At this point, I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Erica.
All right, thank you, Daniel. I am Erica Clagas, Assistant Director of Amateurism Review. I want to thank you so much for being here today. We are so excited to have you with us on the D3 Spring webinar. With our spring webinars, we generally like to keep things a little less formal than you see the rest of the year. It's the beginning of April. We just got through our winter championships and we are well into our spring seasons. Before we know it, it's going to be the end of the school year. And we here at the Eligibility Center are prepping for our 24-25 enrollees. So with that said, we would really appreciate it if you'd put your questions in the chat. I may be able to answer them here live. We also have staff on hand to answer them in the chat. If you leave your email address with your questions, we can get back to you if we're not able to answer the questions before the end of the webinar. So we may be able to address the topic when we put together our regional rules materials too. So please do not be shy. We have heard from our advisory group and through the D3 survey that it closed last month, that we need to continue to educate about who needs an amateurism certification from the Eligibility Center. So here we are. Before we go any further, I want to point out that every blue link in this PowerPoint is a clickable link where we will share these materials later. Feel free to check out the additional materials we've got highlighted throughout once we send out the PDF version of these PowerPoint materials. When it comes to the international student athlete definition, the very first thing that I will say is that this is for student athletes who enrolled at Division III for the first time in fall 2023 or later. This does not apply to anyone who enrolled at Division III before fall 2023. This is a three-pronged approach to deciding if your international student, if your student athlete meets the definition of an international student athlete. So if you check yes to any of these items, your student athlete is going to need to be certified by the Eligibility Center. So first, did they attend a secondary or post-secondary school outside of the US? The only exception here is for a US-based student who studies abroad, but only if they do not compete in their sport while studying abroad. So that is box number one. Number two is, do they have permanent residence outside of the United States? So if the answer is yes, even if they don't check yes for either of the other boxes, they still need to be certified by the Eligibility Center. And then lastly, did they compete outside of the US? So this part is a little bit nuanced because we have clarification regarding US-based PSAs and teams who compete outside of the United States. So we got this clarification last year. It's nothing new, but essentially in team sports, if the PSA and the team are both based here in the US and compete abroad, that does not require an EC certification. An example would be an AAU team based out of Northern New York who crosses into Canada for a tournament. Those student athletes would check no for this box. On the individual side, the example I would give is a US-based tennis player who travels to Europe for an ITF event. If they are based in the US and travel outside of the US, to play in a tournament or to compete in, say, a track meet or something, they would also check no to this box. Anyone who is based outside of the US and competes outside of the US, those people would check yes in this box. So if you check yes to any one of these, that student athlete will require an amateurism certification by the Eligibility Center. And now we are going to go through some case studies to check your knowledge on what we just learned. Okay, so first of all, we would love it if you put your answers into the chat. We want to see how many of you get these questions right. So we're going to start with a fall 2024 enrollee. For our purposes, they are enrolling at Division III here in fall 2024. This student athlete has a permanent residence in France, but we'll say that they're living here in Miami, Florida with relatives, an aunt, an uncle, 2 cousins. This student has only competed locally in the Florida area, either with their high school or maybe with a travel team, only in the US. Does this student athlete need an amateurism certification? The answer is yes. If the permanent residence is outside of the US, that's enough to require a student athlete to be certified by the Eligibility Center. Now, what is really important to remember here with this PSA and in this scenario is that they may not automatically end up in our work list if they registered with their Florida address. And even if they are on a Division III IRL. They've got a Florida address, Florida high school, no competition outside of the US. So our system may not automatically identify them as an international student athlete. So you may need to reach out to the EC to ask that we manually pull them into the work list if it doesn't appear that they are getting worked on, if it's been a few days and you haven't seen any updates in their account. Student athlete number 2. This student athlete enrolled at Division III in fall 2021. They transferred to a Division I school in fall 2022 and now are transferring back to Division III in fall 2024. Does this student athlete need an amateurism certification from the Eligibility Center? Go ahead and put your answers in the chat for us. So the answer here is no. What we said in the last slide is that this registration does not apply to any student athletes enrolling at Division III earlier than fall 2023. So this student athlete who enrolled at Division III in fall 2021 does not fall under the requirements to be certified by the Eligibility Center. All right, we're back to a fall 2024 enrollee at Division III. This PSA is a US citizen whose family is stationed in Germany. They attended a US Department of Defense secondary school. Now, does this student athlete need an amateurism certification by the Eligibility Center? And the answer here is yes. Department of Defense schools located outside of the US are included in the international student athlete definition. One thing that we left out in this example is many times these student athletes are still playing their sport, again, still outside of the US. So they would also meet the second prong of participation outside of the US. So they may end up meeting 2 prongs of the definition anyways, but the Department of Defense school located outside of the US is considered education outside of the US. All right, our last case study here, we've got again a fall 2024 enrollee at Division III. This one is from Indiana. This student studied abroad in Spain during their senior year, but they did not play their sport while living abroad. Does this student athlete need an amateurism certification from the EC? The answer is no, because they did not compete in their sport while studying abroad. They do not require a certification by the Eligibility Center. So now that we've gone through a few case studies, how are we feeling about the definition of an international student athlete? And who needs to be certified by the Eligibility Center? We feeling good? All right, I'm good. So now we're going to move on from our case studies. The question here, what if I just can't find my PSA in the membership portal? It could be that the account isn't paid or that they haven't finished their fee waiver. That account doesn't show visible to anyone if this until it's either paid or the fee waiver is finalized, just kind of out there in limbo. Another option would be it just was mistyped. You either mistyped the ID number or misspelled the name, especially if it's a common name with many spellings, or your coach gives you a name word of mouth. Or maybe you just found a bunch of student athletes with the same name and you're not sure which one is the one you're looking for. Best practice is to get the PSA to send you their ID number, send it to you or your coach, and the copy and paste it into the search box. Now, what if I can find my PSA, but they only have a profile page? With Compliance Assistant 2.0, we allow you to activate a profile page, but you do not get any of the certification benefits of an IRL with a profile page account. So you cannot track a PSA for updates to their account. They're not going to be in line for a certification with a profile page account, so there won't be any tasks to notify you about. Ultimately, if you see the red profile next to their account, you can activate them, but I would work through your coach to tell them to transition the account to an amateurism only certification account. Again, the only benefits of activating an IRL is to move the ID number over into Compliance Assistant 2.0, and that won't help your international PSAs with their Eligibility Center certifications. So here I want to highlight a few of the ways that the EC here is trying to help your PSAs. One of the big benefits of a profile page account for the PSA is that they get all of the same educational reminders and materials that a certification account will get. We are constantly using our newsletter to remind the PSA to transition their account to a certification account. We have FAQ, frequently asked question articles on eligibilitycenter.org. These are really nice because you can type in a question or a general topic and get answers to your questions. And then lastly, we have done PSA webinars specifically geared towards international PSAs. All of these resources are available to the PSAs, either emailed to them directly once they get registered or just generally on eligibilitycenter.org. Right, on this slide, we've got a couple resources that you can share with your student athletes, including a registration checklist and the amateurism flyer for Division III recruits. We would also encourage you to share these items with your student athletes, encourage them to check their open tasks and respond to them in a timely manner. All right, one question that we get a lot is, what sports does the Eligibility Center certify? We certify varsity intercollegiate sports. One question we seem to get a lot is about the sport of squash. We do not certify squash, but you will find a full list of the sports that we do certify here on the screen or in Bylaw 17023. We'll talk on the next slide about how to update your sponsored sports lists. So here we have a link to our membership portal quick start guide. This is a great guide on just generally how to navigate through the portal. Once you're in the portal resources page, you can find it in the how-to section. I would recommend you maybe save it to your desktop, so you've just generally got it on hand. But this document is great because it can help you find where to activate your IRLs, where to run reports, and how to update your sponsored sports lists. To do so, you will check the Update Sports option in the IRL tab at the top of the membership portal. And then once you're in the Update Sports tab, you can choose Deactivate or Add Sports next to the appropriate sports. Now I've got a quick reminder. If you have not done so yet, it might be a good time to do your yearly review of your school's sponsored sports lists. Have you dropped a sport or added a sport for next year? Go ahead and update those lists today. All right, another question that we get a lot. What is a matriculation date? The matriculation date is the first date a PSA enrolled full-time at any college or university anywhere in the world. With this task, we are asking for a member school to confirm the initial full-time enrollment based on the tracers that you put out or the transcripts that you've received. The matriculation date can be submitted by anyone listed on the school's contact list, but they do need to have access to the membership portal as well. Now, why do we need a matriculation date? There are rules that change based on whether something happened before or after full-time enrollment. So for example, you can play on a professional team before you've enrolled full-time. Granted, you still have to think about delayed enrollment if you keep playing after your grace period. But the rules just simply don't allow you to play on a professional team after you've enrolled full-time at a college or university. In this example, we would require a matriculation date if the student athlete played on a professional team, either past their 1-year grace period, or if we believe they competed on that professional team after they enrolled full-time. So like if they told us that in their registration answers. So if a rule changes the legislative application based on full-time enrollment and it impacts the outcome of the decision, that is when we need the matriculation date. So this slide here is for when your student does not have a matriculation date already on file. This is whether it's from your school or from another school, you could use this option. In the membership portal under Eligibility Center forms, you'll find matriculation date, which will take you to our online form. You'll here at the bottom of the page, there's a small picture. I'll show you a larger picture here in just a minute, but you'll search for the PSA, input their full-time enrollment date, and whether the school is an NCAA school or a non-NCAA school. Just as a quick reminder, it could be that the matriculation date is this upcoming fall, 2024. If they have never enrolled anywhere before and are coming in as a freshman, it could be that they are a student who is coming from a transfer situation. So they're coming from a 2-year college or a grad transfer from an international university. Maybe they're just transferring after 1 year at a Division II school. Whatever it is, we are just looking for whatever that first full-time enrollment date is. Again, this is that larger picture that I talked about. You'll input all of the student athletes information here and just click submit request. For PSAs who do not have a previous enrollment date on file, this is a pretty simple process. Occasionally, you may run into a student athlete who already has a matriculation date on file. So maybe you submitted it and you realized it was wrong, or maybe another school submitted it and the PSA decided not to enroll there after all. If you go to submit the matriculation date for a student athlete who has a different date on file already, you will get this pop-up. If you need to change the matriculation date, you will choose the revised matriculation letter link here and then download the PDF form. You'll fill it out and upload it into the portal, and there are instructions on the form on how to complete that process. Okay, so when are academic documents needed? This is the question that is on all of your minds. This question was prevalent in the D3 membership survey, from conversations we've had with our advisory group, and from just about everyone I've talked to in Division III. We have heard you and have come up with what is hopefully a solution to this issue. So first things first, when do we actually need academic documents? The answer is that we only need them to certify delayed enrollment. If the PSA is participating in organized competition, we need to confirm what that graduation date is using transcripts. What we've done up until this point is task all accounts for transcripts. D1, D2, D3, they all get the same task. The difference with Division III is that if we can confirm that there is no organized competition, for example, you have never played on a professional team or have never accepted prize money, then having the graduation date won't change our decision and we can certify without them. In Divisions 1 and 2, we often do not even review an account until we have a graduation date set, but we chose not to delay a Division III certification for something that in most cases is not needed. So I understand where that is confusing. We said that we needed transcripts, but we didn't actually need transcripts, right? So what we have done is split these tasks into division-specific tasks. We made the original academic documents needed for amateurism certification task into a Division I and Division II task. We made a brand new task for Division III. So now your international student athlete will see the task is not for Division III and they can move on. We will manually assign a Division III academic document task only in the instances that I explained above, where there is a potential for a delayed enrollment condition. So I hope that you are as excited about this as I am. I think that this is going to provide a lot of clarity and really help us get through the 24-25 academic cycle with a lot less confusion about when academic documents are actually needed. All right, a final summary, as we have just gotten past April 1, what does my PSA need to do to be certified by the Eligibility Center? They need to complete their registration and make sure their sports participation questions are completely and fully filled out. They need to make sure their enrollment date is correct and that they have no open amateurism tasks. If all of those things are complete and they do not have a decision, that just means they're in line to be looked at. Last year, we looked at all Division III accounts within 5 business days, which is half of our 10 business day standard. If there is a reason that you need them looked at quicker than the 10 business days, or in most cases, 5 business days, we do have the urgent request option. You can submit an urgent request that will put that account in line to be reviewed within 2 business days. All right, lastly, we've got a handful of PSA targeted resources that you can share with your recruits. These are all the different ways that we have tried to educate on how to request final amateurism and why won't it let me request final amateurism to help brainstorm what's going on in the account. So we have our frequently asked questions on just about any topic, but again, not just limited to requesting final amateurism. We've got downloadable resources that you can share with them via email, and we've also got YouTube videos to walk them through the process. At this time, I am going to hand it back to Daniel to talk about some of our resources, and we'll go through some of the questions that we have in the chat.
Awesome. Thank you, Erica. Thank you for all that content. Like Erica said, I'm going to ask her just a couple questions that we got in the chat today. Before we do that, take your phones out. We have a few more QR codes coming up after this, but this first one, just take a quick short survey on how we did today. Anything that you might want to see from us in future webinars, it'll take you just a couple minutes to complete. So take out your phones while we ask those questions. We'll also have more QR codes to follow this. So the first question, Erica, that I have for you that I see in the chat is, what type of account does my international student athlete need to have in order to be certified?
Yeah, that's a great question. We didn't really talk about it in this webinar, but we have talked about it in previous webinars. We can link to those here in the chat. Your international student athletes can be certified with either an amateurism only certification account or an academic and amateurism certification account. If they already have an academic and amateurism certification account, don't ask them to create a new account. We can use that. We'll go ahead and give them their D3 certification with that account. If they do not have an account at all, they only need an amateurism only certification account. I'd hate to have them pay $160 for an academic and amateurism certification account when they can get what they need with a $70 amateurism only account.
Awesome. Thank you. Our next question here, I can actually answer. Is this being recorded? Yes, this is being recorded. You will be getting sent a recording of the presentation as well as a PDF of today's presentation with those links that will be clickable. So you will be seeing that in the following days, the recording as well as the PDF of this presentation. Final question here we have for you, Erica, is what do I do if I see a Division I or Division II task for academic documents in the account?
Yeah, if you see a task that's specific to Division I or Division II, you can have your student athletes ignore it. They will only need to complete those tasks if they are undecided and still weighing their D1 and D2 options, or if they plan to transfer to a D1, D2 school down the road, but they don't need to answer that task until they're at that point. So if they are on campus, we're planning for them to compete here this upcoming academic year, they can just go ahead and ignore those D1 and D2 tasks. The task itself will stay open indefinitely and it won't harm the account. So just have them ignore the task.
Awesome. Thank you, Erica. Thank you for answering those questions. Like I said, we have some resources for you all. So if you keep on having your phones out, please feel free to scan that QR code if you're not already subscribed to our Division III membership newsletter. That newsletter goes out once a month with key updates from the Eligibility Center, as well as other resources that we have there, like the Division III amateurism flyer and the guide for the NCAA compliance administrator. Like I said, these links will be clickable for you once you get this presentation sent. So feel free to click through those resources as well. A few more QR codes. Please feel free to follow us on any social media platform that you have. We're on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and now YouTube as well. These are great also areas of resources as well that are frequently updated, that are posted on our social media channels. So feel free to follow us on any platform that you may have. With that being said, I want to thank you all for joining us today. As a fellow D3 alum, I know you all wear a lot of hats, so thank you all for that you do for Division III. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule and assisting with Division III student athletes. We will see you next time. We hope you have a great rest of your day.